It's Ridge Racer! Ridge Racer!
So, Nintendo Direct for Switch 2 has come and gone, and it looks like the 10th generation of video game consoles is upon us. Which means it's time to begin wallowing in the existential dread that we are powerless against the unstoppable march of time, and that we as a species can now begin to look back on our past and start reflecting upon our actions. So Switch 2 is on the way, and there are already rumors circulating about the PlayStation 6, and Microsoft is working on their new thing, which I'm sure will have a stupid name like the rest of them. And the sort of vibes going around right now, the feelings in the air, are not really ones of excitement. There is excitement over the Switch 2, but for everything else, there seems to be this common sentiment that Gen 9 really didn't feel all that special and barely even felt like it existed. So starting off here, I kind of want to talk about the timeline of these things, mostly about how some people feel like it's too soon. The PS5 and Series X just came out. People are ready for a new Nintendo console because the Switch is approaching a decade old at this point. The thing came out in 2017. But the new PlayStation and Xbox, well, they're still brand new. Except they're not. One thing to keep in mind is that the 8th generation of consoles had an uncharacteristically long lifespan. If you look at the timeline of video game consoles throughout the decades, you'll see that a console's lifespan is usually around 5-ish years. Nintendo especially tends to stick to the schedule, which doesn't seem like a long time, but it is half a decade. To put it into perspective, if a console came out during the summer that you graduated middle school, the next one would be coming out around the time you're starting college. And I think no one really sees the Switch as a Gen 9 console, and I think that's partially because people forget that the Wii U was a thing that ever actually existed. But also, it competed with the PlayStation 4 and the Xbox One for half of its life. I've seen some graphics that classify the Switch as a late Gen 8 console, which that's not how generations work. When a console successor is released, that's a new generation. But keep in mind, when it comes to Gen 9, it's not that the Switch was super early, it's more so that the PS5 and Xbox Series X and S were both kind of late. But I think it mostly feels too soon due to mystical lockdown time erasure. Because the years 2020 through 2022 just mostly feel like they didn't even really happen. Everyone's lives just basically stopped for 2 years, and so everyone's brains have just skipped from March 2020 straight to January of 2023. And I think that the newest PlayStation and Xbox both launching in November of 2020 did them absolutely no favors. Plus, a lot of people didn't even get one on launch. There was the scalper epidemic and, of course, all of the shipping and manufacturing issues. And so I think people are mostly getting a hold of these things recently, especially with the Model 2 PS5s launching. And so I think a lot of people have really only been playing on the newest consoles for the last, 1 or 2 years. And the market really shows it. See, I think Gen 9's biggest problem is that it really feels like it's still waiting to take off. See, every time that there is a new console generation, there's this awkward transitional period where many cross-platform games are coming out for everything, both new and old-gen consoles, and some games are still launching exclusively for last-gen consoles. But slowly over time, the last-gen versions of the cross-platform games start to lose support, and games begin to exclusively launch on the current generation of consoles. And nearly 5 years down the line, with the new generation approaching us at alarming speeds with sexual intent, it feels like we're still in this transitional phase. Games are still coming out for PS4 and Xbox One, and unlike previous generations, the versions on modern consoles don't feel quite as special. See, when Generation 8 was launched in 2013, the Xbox 360 was dropped like a millionaire's unwanted ninth child down the flight of cantilever stairs. But the PS3 and even the Wii was supported well into the Wii U and PS4's life cycle. The Wii kept support for obvious reasons, but the PS3 kept support mostly due to its popularity in Japan. The PS3 was an awkward child at birth, but post-puberty managed to become a worthwhile machine. I mean, we were even getting games still exclusive to PS3 in 2015, but even with the PS3 still getting support, when games came out on both consoles, it still felt a little different. buying the PS4 version felt like you were getting a significantly better version than the PS3. But today, if a game comes out on PS4 or PS5, it feels more like you're buying the PS5 version mostly because you have a PS5, so you might as well get the newer console version, rather than it feeling like you're getting the more impressive version. And the PS5 does have some tricks up its sleeve, but nothing that really makes it feel like you've fully upgraded into a new era of gaming. I mean, Bugsnax is one of my favorite games to play on PS5, and one of the things that makes it super cool is the use of the PS5 controller. It takes advantage of the analog haptic feedback trigger things that I'm sure Sony has some name for that I've just forgotten. So the different tools you use actually feel different. The slingshot feels like you're pulling back on the rubber band. The camera actually feels like you're clicking the button of an actual camera. But this stuff isn't necessary. I like it, and it makes the experience of playing the game cooler, but the game can survive without it. It didn't need the PS5 to work. And we know that because it eventually came to PC. And the Xbox consoles feel even weirder, because while Sony did try to make a traditional push into the next generation, with the PS5 being the new separate thing, Microsoft has taken the approach that the Xbox One family of consoles and the Xbox Series X and S family of consoles are kind of one big ecosystem. The UI and the console menus are exactly the same. The controllers are mostly the same, but the newer ones have a different D-pad and a social button. But the new controllers work perfectly fine on an Xbox One, as if they're just Xbox One controllers. I had a launch day Xbox One for years, and I just recently upgraded to an Xbox Series S. And I really don't feel like I've moved to a brand new console. It just feels like I have the same console, but it can actually play every game on Game Pass without having to play it through cloud gaming. And also, I can't play any of my discs. Yeah, I tried all digital. I'm not a fan. I bought a PS5 in 2021. I specifically bought it because Neptunia Reverse was coming out as a PS5 exclusive. It wasn't worth it. But after having it for a couple years, I had a financial emergency and ended up selling off almost my entire gaming collection. And since then, I haven't bought another one. I haven't had a PS5 for about a year and a half, and I just bought a Series S last month, which for reference, that would be February 2025. And honestly, I don't feel like I've really missed all that much. And I think the final reason for all of this is just that the advancements in gaming is beginning to plateau. Technology in gaming is still advancing, but it's becoming less and less immediately apparent upon the jump to the new generation. Like, the jump from the PS1 to PS2 was massive. The jump from PS2 to PS3 was also huge. From PS3 to PS4 was less extreme, but still noticeable. I'm gonna be honest, I don't have a 4K TV. The PS5 looks mostly the same to me. The race to make textures in video games look more and more realistic is kind of slowing down, mostly because I think improvements are becoming more and more difficult the further we go. As we climb the mountain, it just keeps getting steeper and steeper. There seems to be this fear of abandoning Gen 8, and I think the biggest reason for that is inclusion. Console exclusives are becoming a dying breed. Many of Sony's PlayStation exclusive games have made their way to PC. Xbox and Nintendo have been having talks of collaboration for a while now. Some stuff was already confirmed by Microsoft. As I'm writing this, the Switch 2 Direct hasn't happened yet, though by the time I post it, it probably already will have, so we'll see if anything is mentioned. So I think just not enough people had made the jump to the new generation, and game developers and publishers don't want to try to isolate things to just the people that have. So we'll see what happens as we get closer to Generation 10, because Generation 9 really feels like a massive half step. I apologize if this video was really short and didn't really have anything profound to say, or was just a rehash of the discussion going on right now. But this has been on my mind for a while, and I just needed a void to scream it into. So we'll see what Gen 10 holds, and what happens with the Switch 2. I'm sure Nintendo will find some brand new and exciting ways that we, as the consumer, can spend $60 for a port of a game that came out in 2002.